All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that kind of touches all of us, right? As technology keeps advancing, and that is the whole world of data ethics. You're living in this digital world every day, and we want to help you really understand the key ideas here, the important stuff, without making it too overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of this as your sort of like a crash course, right? In data ethics, we've gone through, we've dug into some really fascinating material, including an online course called Data Ethics: Navigating the Ethical Landscape of Emerging Technologies. It's from eLearning World Europe AB. And then we also have this really helpful document that outlines, the role of a data ethicist, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's going to be key. So our goal today is to really understand, what data ethics is, why it's becoming so crucial, especially with the rise of, we had this term a lot, deep tech, and we're going to talk about that. And of course, we're going to talk about the people who are doing the work, the important work of figuring out, how we use data ethically, the data ethicists. So, okay, let's start with that term, deep tech, right? What is that, and why does it make these ethical considerations so much more important now?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Where we kind of have to start. So deep tech, it refers to these technologies that are built on, really significant scientific and engineering breakthroughs. We're talking about things like, really advanced AI. These are complex computer systems that can learn, and they can make decisions based on the data that they take in. But also, things like biotechnology, advanced robotics, blockchain technology, stuff that you hear about all the time. And all of these things have the potential to really create, huge shifts in society. And the thing that's so interesting about deep tech is that, because these technologies are so powerful, and a lot of times they operate in ways that we don't, immediately see or understand, they kind of naturally bring up, a whole new set of ethical questions.
Right. It's not just about keeping your password safe or things like that anymore, right? I mean, we were talking about ensuring fairness in algorithms.
Yeah.
The sets of rules that computers follow that might be, making decisions about things that really affect people, like, loan applications or who gets what opportunities, and then understanding the potential, for unintended consequences in these AI systems that are just so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's the whole issue of privacy, which has always been important. But now it's with these personalized technologies, how much information are we really giving up, and who has access to it, and what are they doing with it? And then there's also this fundamental question of who is responsible when something goes wrong?
Exactly. And the course material that we looked at, it uses a really interesting way to kind of frame all these issues. It draws on science fiction, the works of people like Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, George Orwell, even Aldous Huxley. These writers, they were exploring these very themes, of technology and its impact on humanity decades ago.
That's a really fascinating way to approach it. It's like they're using these fictional scenarios to kind of try to anticipate potential ethical challenges before they really fully emerge in the real world. It's almost like they're giving us a warning or a roadmap or something, and it makes you think about how these early imaginings connect with what we're talking about now. with things like the EU AI Act and the Asilomar AI principles. It's all about trying to think ahead, to get ahead of the curve.
Absolutely, it's about being proactive, not reactive. And the course, it really emphasizes that that deep tech isn't, it's not just this theoretical, science fiction thing. It has a really profound impact on society, on all of us, as individuals. And so understanding this human element is really, really central to the whole study of data ethics.
Yeah, and it strikes me that, data ethics it's not like a standalone subject, right? It seems to draw from a lot of different areas of knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamentally interdisciplinary. I mean, think about it. You need computer science, you need information science to really grasp, the technical side, the nuts and bolts of how data is collected and stored and analyzed. But then you also need philosophy, right? To provide the core ethical concepts, the ideas around fairness and privacy and accountability. I mean, these are philosophical questions at their heart.
Right. You can't really have a meaningful discussion about the ethics of, say, an AI medical diagnosis tool without understanding how the AI works in the first place. But you also need that ethical framework, to determine what constitutes responsible development and use.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. The social sciences, things like sociology, psychology, are vital for understanding how data practices actually affect people, how the existing, patterns in society might be reflected or even amplified in the data, and how social structures could be influenced, by these technologies. And then you have the legal aspects, right? Laws like the EU AI Act, which is, it's trying to regulate artificial intelligence, and the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is focused on data privacy. So, these things set the legal boundaries for how we handle data. And even business and economics are involved when we consider the responsible and ethical use of data in commercial contexts.
Right, because businesses are using data all the time now, to understand their customers, to target advertising, to make decisions about what products to develop and how to market them.
Absolutely. So, it's this really interesting mix of different fields. It's not just for tech experts or philosophers. It affects everyone. And that kind of leads us to this interesting role that we've seen outlined, this idea of the data ethicist.
Yeah, the data ethicist. What exactly does someone in this role, what do they do?
Well, the document on the role of a data ethicist, it really kind of lays it out there. Essentially, a data ethicist, they act as kind of like a guiding conscience for an organization when it comes to data. Their main job is to make sure that all the data practices are ethical, that they're doing things the right way.
Okay, so it's like they're the moral compass, for these organizations that are dealing with so much data.
Exactly. And, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, I can imagine. So can we break down some of their key tasks? Like, what are the things that they actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So first and foremost, they offer ethical guidance on anything related to data. I mean, they're the experts that people go to when they have these tough ethical questions. They're the ones who help make sure that the way the data is being used is aligning with, established ethical standards and principles.
So if a team is developing a new AI-powered tool or something, they would probably, consult with a data ethicist early on to try to identify and address any potential ethical issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads directly to another really crucial role, which is developing policies. So data ethicists, they help create and put in place the actual guidelines for data use within an organization. They make sure that these policies meet legal requirements, because there are laws about this stuff, but they also make sure that they meet ethical best practices.
So it's like they're setting the rules of the road,
yeah,
right? Before any problems even arise.
Exactly.
What about when projects are already underway? Like, is there still a role for the data ethicist then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's where assessing potential issues comes in. So data ethicists, they evaluate the possible ethical risks that are linked to specific data projects. This could involve, spotting vulnerabilities in how personal information is protected, or looking at the potential for unintended consequences in algorithms, or any other ways that the project might, negatively affect individuals or groups of people. It's kind of like a preemptive check to make sure that everything's on the right track.
Right. So they're not just creating policies. They're also actively involved in making sure that those policies are being followed.
Exactly. And they don't work in isolation. They have to engage with different stakeholders, all kinds of people across the organization. They need to work with, the data scientists and the engineers who are actually building these systems, and they need to work with the business leaders who are making decisions about how the data is used. So, they're kind of like a bridge between the technical side and the ethical considerations.
Yeah, so communication skills must be like really important for a data ethicist.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they have to be able to explain these complex concepts in a way that everyone can understand, and providing training and raising awareness are, huge parts of what they do. Data ethicists, they educate their colleagues about the ethical considerations related to data. They foster a culture where thinking ethically about data is a priority for everyone, who handles it.
It's about making, ethical thinking just a normal part of how things are done. Now, what happens after the policies are in place and people have been trained? Is that the end of the data ethicist's role?
No, not at all. I mean, it's an ongoing process. They have to continuously check and review the data practices. They need to monitor how data is being used, and they need to audit processes to make sure that the organization is continuing to follow ethical standards in its own policies.
So it's like a constant process of making sure that everyone is staying on track and doing the right thing.
Right.
And I noticed that the document also mentioned advocating for individuals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really important part of the role. So data ethicists, they act as advocates for the rights and interests of the people whose data is being used. They work to ensure that people's privacy is respected, that their dignity is respected, and how the data is collected and used.
I can see how that would be, especially important in a world where there's so much data being collected about us all the time.
Right.
What about when things go wrong? What happens if there's an ethical breach or something?
Well, that's another key area where data ethicists are involved. If an ethical problem arises, they help manage the situation, they work to minimize any negative impacts, and they put in place steps to try to prevent similar incidents from happening again in the future.
So they're not just there to prevent problems. They're also there to help clean up the mess if something does go wrong.
Yeah, it's about taking responsibility.
Now, the field of data ethics itself, it must be constantly changing, right? As technology evolves, new ethical challenges must be emerging all the time.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very dynamic field. And so staying updated, through research, through, following new developments is really vital. Data ethicists, they have to keep up with, the latest research. They have to keep up with the new ethical challenges that are emerging. They have to keep up with best practices. And then they have to figure out how to, incorporate all of that into their organization's data strategies.
So it's not a static job. It's a job that requires, constant learning and adaptation.
Yeah, definitely.
And the last point that was mentioned in the document was about openness and accountability. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's a really important one too. So data ethicists, they promote transparency in how data is used, and they work to ensure that organizations are accountable for their decisions and actions related to data. This helps build trust, with the public and with the individuals whose data is being handled. It's about being open and honest and responsible.
Right. Because if people don't trust that their data is being handled ethically, then they're going to be less likely to share their data in the first place, and that could really stifle innovation.
Exactly.
So the main goal, as the document kind of lays out, is to find this balance.
Yeah.
Right, between the incredible potential benefits of using data, to make our lives better, to solve problems, but also the fundamental need to protect individual rights and to maintain public trust. It's a really important balancing act.
It is, and it's something that we have to get right.
Now, for our listeners out there who might be thinking this is really important, how can I learn more about this? The course that we mentioned earlier, the data ethics course, seems like a really good place to start. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it offers?
Sure. So the data ethics online course, it's designed to give you a really thorough introduction to the field. It's self-paced, which is great, for people who are busy. They can fit it into their schedules. And it uses an interactive book, which can make learning a lot more engaging than just, reading text on a screen.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken some online courses, and the ones that are interactive are definitely, they're more fun and they're more effective, I think.
Right. They help you really, really grasp the concepts.
So what kind of topics does it cover?
It covers a really wide range of topics, everything from the basic principles of data ethics to specific case studies of how these principles have been applied in real world situations. And it also looks at, the different laws and regulations that are relevant to data ethics.
And you mentioned that it was interactive. So what does that mean? Like, are there quizzes or exercises or something?
Yeah, there are interactive quizzes and exercises that help you check your understanding as you go along, and there are also simulations where you can actually put yourself in the shoes of a data ethicist and make decisions about how to handle different ethical dilemmas.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not just theoretical. It's really about applying these concepts.
Exactly.
What's the structure of the course like?
So it's organized into 6 lessons, and each lesson focuses on a specific aspect of deep tech and ethics. Within each lesson, you'll find readings in the interactive book. You'll find interactive case studies to analyze. You'll find hands-on exercises to work through, and then to supplement all of that, they also include relevant readings from academic articles and things like that. And there's also some more advanced scenario-based learning to really test your understanding, and even some lectures from experts in the field.
So it sounds like a really well-rounded way to learn about data ethics.
It is.
And how is your progress assessed? Like, how do you know if you're actually learning the material?
Well, your learning is assessed through quizzes along the way and in assignments where you can apply what you've learned, and then the course culminates in a final project.
Yeah.
Where you actually develop a plan for the ethical development and use of a deep tech application.
Yeah.
So it's really about taking what you've learned and putting it into practice.
Oh, that's great. So you actually get to create something, which is always a good way to really solidify your understanding.
Yeah.
I also saw that there were some additional learning objectives that were mentioned starting from February 2025. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so these additional learning objectives, they kind of expand on the initial, foundational knowledge. They include things like, gaining a deeper understanding of a specific area within science, engineering, or computer science.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically focusing on deep tech innovations in that area and how they're being applied to real world problems.
So it encourages like a more focused exploration of a particular deep tech area.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And then another added objective is developing skills that are relevant to starting new ventures, not by directly teaching business strategy or anything like that, but by exploring how ethical considerations actually influence market dynamics and decision making when you're bringing deep tech solutions to market.
Oh, that's interesting. So the idea is that being aware of these ethical considerations is actually, an important part of being successful in this field.
Exactly. You can't just focus on the technology. You have to think about the ethical implications as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it also aims to, encourage an approach that brings together different fields. It highlights how experts from various backgrounds can work together on innovative solutions, often through simulations and interactive exercises that consider both business and ethical implications.
So fostering that kind of cross-disciplinary thinking is really essential for tackling these complex ethical issues, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not something that any one discipline can solve on its own.
Okay, what else?
Other added objectives include, incorporating learning through challenges and creative problem solving, which they do through those case studies in the final project, focusing on important deep tech skills like research, critical thinking, communication, and encouraging reflection on the fundamental nature of deep tech itself,
Yeah.
how we define it, how we understand its implications, and its broader impact on things like, personal information protection, security, and the environment.
So it sounds like a really comprehensive learning experience.
It is.
And what specific skills does the course aim to develop?
So the course, it highlights skills like finding information, being able to analyze and evaluate both information and data, understanding and analyzing relevant laws and regulations, and critically evaluating digital content, which is, something that we all need to be able to do these days.
Yeah, those are all really, really valuable skills in today's world, no matter what your specific field is.
Right.
And who is this course really intended for?
Well, the intended audience is quite broad. It includes anyone who is interested in the ethical implications of deep tech, but it specifically targets students in deep tech fields, professionals working in deep tech industries, as well as policymakers who are dealing with the regulatory aspects of all of this. And it's mentioned that a basic understanding of deep tech is helpful, but you don't need any prior knowledge of ethics to begin the course.
So it's really accessible to a wide range of people.
Yeah.
That's great. So to kind of summarize our discussion today, what's the key takeaway? Like what's the one thing that you want our listeners to walk away with?
The essential point is that data ethics is no longer a specialized concern. It's a critical and interdisciplinary field that is absolutely vital in this era of rapidly advancing deep technologies. understanding the core principles of data ethics and appreciating the essential role of data ethicists is fundamental for fostering responsible innovation that benefits society while respecting individual rights. At the end of the day, it's about finding that balance between progress and protecting people.
Absolutely. And our listener, should now have a much clearer understanding of the fundamental ethical considerations surrounding deep tech and the dedicated professionals who are working to guide these practices. So thanks for taking this deep dive with us. And on that note, here's a final thought to consider. With deep tech becoming more and more a part of our daily lives, what role do each of us play in ensuring responsible data practices? Beyond the vital work of organizations and data ethicists, what can we do as individuals to make sure that data is being used ethically? It's something to think about. And if you're interested in exploring this further, perhaps look into resources like the data ethics course that we mentioned. Until our next deep dive.
Take care.
See you later.